one of the biggest things that people don't know about the regular ACT test, those standards come from a national curriculum survey. They ask educators, employers, and employees, what should kids know and be able to do? And that's where they write the ACT standards. That's where they take the assessments from. And so when you take that assessment, it tells you if you're ready for college, but you're getting skills that workplace people want, and it shows in that National Career Readiness Certificate rating.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is unpacking how the ACT can prepare students for career, community, and life readiness. Joining us today is Dean Simon and Fred McConnel from ACT. Dean is the Account Executive and Clients Relations for Wisconsin. He's worked for ACT just about a year now. Prior to that, he's been a chemistry teacher in the Kimberly School District here in Wisconsin for over 40 years. That's pretty impressive, Dean, to tell you the truth. That's a lot of years. Fred is the Senior Director of Workforce at ACT, and he's been with ACT for 14 years. He's worked in workforce development with the state of Georgia prior to that, where he started the work-ready communities that used ACT work keys, which is a part of ACT. Welcome, fellas. How you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. How's your year going? For us in education that live in it every day, we're getting pretty excited because June's around the corner, and that's when the kids get to go for a break for a while. Similar for you guys?
For me, it's old habits die hard, and I had 40 years in the classroom, and so when spring comes, I start to be thinking about summer and getting ready for those kinds of things. But the work still continues. It's a little different, being with ACT, because I'm still visiting schools and meeting with educators and planning for next year.
Yeah.
What about you, Fred?
Yeah. Personally, I've got two kids about ready to wrap up, but in the workforce development world, it never sleeps. There's people always looking for new careers, looking for new jobs, and being able to work with communities and service delivery providers to help them get those jobs. That's a 24/7, 365-day-a-year project.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us here today. I'm really excited about the topic. Dean reached out to me, obviously being a part of the state of Wisconsin here, and we were able to meet, and I started to scratch my head a little bit and go, I wonder if it'd be a good webcast to talk a little bit about how ACT can fit into this career, community, life readiness work that we're doing at CESA 2. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. So let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you guys tell me a little bit about your journey? How did you get where you're at?
You want to go, Fred?
Kick us off, Dean.
All right. Well, I started, as I said, in a classroom, and I was in our school office one day, and my predecessor at ACT came in and said, "Hey, Dean, you might really enjoy this work." And so I kind of rode along with him, and I saw the value in what he did, and I saw some things like traveling all around Wisconsin. I'm a Wisconsin boy. I grew up all over the state, and just going with him, I really enjoyed it. And this sounds very corny, but I know I made a difference in one classroom for 40 years, but now I get a chance to make a difference in classrooms all over the state, 450 districts, and that's I think a life well lived. So I'm really loving it. I'm approaching my first anniversary with the company, and I just want to help kids like I've been doing my whole life.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And really 40 years, in a classroom, that's amazing. Great job.
Thank you. My cousin, about 10 years older than me, taught math, and he said, "Dean, if you're going to teach something that kids want to take, not the ones that they have to take." So I gravitated towards science anyway. I did well on my science ACT score, and I wound up in the chemistry classroom, and I really, really enjoyed it my whole career.
You got to blow things up.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, what kid wouldn't want to blow something up, right?
That's right.
How about you, Fred?
Yeah, so I've spent my entire career in and around workforce development and work keys. I came out of Florida State University and was looking to go home and teach at my old high school here in the Atlanta metro area. And just kind of off of a whim, I said, well, there's a new group that's forming here in Georgia underneath the governor, Sonny Perdue, at the time, called the Governor's Office of Workforce Development. Workforce development was a pretty new concept for the state of Georgia at the time. It was only really coming to the forefront, and a couple of states had an Office of Workforce Development. And I went and started that job and ended up traveling the state, going to all 159 counties at some point, and starting an initiative at the time, which was a pilot called Work Ready Communities. And Work Ready Communities was really an ecosystem developing strategy using ACT work keys to build a common language that would allow our K-12, community colleges, workforce boards, and employers to understand what skills were and how they could be utilized. Over that period of time, and with the governor's office, we got, I think, 149 of the 159 counties launched. And we got to the point where we were starting to really attract employers. At the time, Georgia, and still today, was really in a dogfight with Tennessee, South Carolina, and Alabama for employers' site selections. And we saw this as a way to really help ourselves stand out. Finally, we had one German company come in and say, hey, we love this program. It's great. It's the data we like to see, but isn't it, as a state initiative, kind of like giving yourself a gold star? Shouldn't there be an overarching group that determines what a work rate community looks like? So that's how we've gotten today with ACT, where ACT is an impartial third party. We have 60 years of data to back up. We have the research arm. And now today, Work Ready Communities has evolved from that one small Georgia initiative into a nationwide best practice that has over 35 states participating, and allows site selectors, economic developers, and businesses to see community skills force and compare it apples to apples. And it has been truly an amazing adventure, and love to see it grow the way it has and continue to grow through the initiative of communities.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting work. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. It's been a pleasure to meet you also. When we jumped on a Zoom just about a week ago, I was amazed at some of the things that are happening, in a lot of the states throughout the US around work keys, and the relationship it really has on the need right now in our school systems. So I'm really, really curious, and I'm looking forward for us to us talking a little more about it. We always on the webcast, we generally will talk the why, what, how. So I want to start with the why. As we know, our educational system needs to shift, needs to change. We need to transform. We're seeing high levels of student disengagement. Kids just are telling us we're not interested. Why the need for us to change, and what's the role in ACT in that?
I think one of the first things that I would say is that there's a misconception that ACT is simply a college entrance exam. And it certainly is. The data proves that those scores that a student gets on the ACT are a good indicator of whether or not they'll have success in college. But what people don't know is that they're also really good indicators of how a student going into the workforce will do as well. There's a little in the lower right-hand corner of every individual student report, there's a little NCRC rating of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum that data backs up. If you get these scores, you'll get a gold rating. And that gold rating says, hey, those kids are ready for 93% of the jobs that are out there. And so I think that's sort of a message that really needs to be told at schools. I put together a little slideshow for schools about why should I try on the ACT? And the short answer is, the ACT measures skills that you're going to need in the workforce, not just skills that you're going to need in college, but skills that you're going to need in the workforce. And I could go into a little more about where those standards and those skills come from, but I'll let Fred maybe chime in and talk about from his point of view.
Yeah, the why is a big one. So I see it in my own community of students sometimes getting disengaged because they aren't being taught the way that they best understand. I even have my own daughter coming home being like, I just don't understand the math I'm being taught. I don't know why I need to see it. And me as a history major growing up, math was never my thing. One thing that really did quick for me, though, was that when the first time I took the work keys assessments, which lead up to the National Career Readiness Certificate, was it took applied math that I would have learned in high school, some in college, but it took that math and it put it into real world context. So one question, and this isn't giving anything away because it's a practical question now, but one that really connected it for me was I always struggled with the math when they started putting letters in. I'm like, come on, guys, this is math. This is about numbers. Why are we talking letters here? That is my basic understanding.
Makes sense. Pretty logical.
We got here. I'm way out of the league on that. This doesn't make any sense. But what it really connected me was a question on there said, you are a general contractor. You're trying to resurface the floor of a gym. Your gym floor is 300 feet by 600 feet. Every bucket of lacquer covers 40 square feet. How many buckets of lacquer do you need as a contractor to resurface this floor? And I'm like, oh, wait, so this is what this is being applied for? This is what we're learning? This totally makes sense. And that just needed that connection to see why these things are valuable. So that's what WorkKeys does, is it puts things you may have learned either in school or in your life or previous jobs and puts them into real world context that actually connect to potential jobs in the future. And then, of course, why ACT? ACT WorkKeys and ACT in general is the only organization I know of that really is armed to give students the data and the information they need to help make their own decisions. So you have, like what Dean said a moment ago, when you get your ACT score back, you get your score. Hey, congratulations. You scored a 24, 25, 26. You, of course, know what that can do for your college preparedness. But also, if you aren't thinking that college is the route for you and you want to go a different direction, either to your local community, technical college, or directly into work, you also, with these scores, will probably score a silver level certificate in the NCRC. The silver level means that you can do 70% of the jobs that have ever been profiled. Well, we can dig more into that. Well, I'm really interested in going to be an auto mechanic. Do I currently have the skills necessary to be an auto mechanic? And it will tell you based on a national average, well, right now you're lacking a little bit in math. If you bring up that math score, then yes, you will have the necessary skills to be able to be an auto mechanic. And it will even give you what that national average salary is. And I've always noticed when talking about high school students, they like to talk about what they want to do. But the real thing is when you show them, well, this is also the average salary you will earn once you get to these different skill levels. And when you're trying to talk about them about continuous learning, if you get a silver, your average salary is going to be $50,000. But if you go up to gold, that jumps to $75,000. And high school students' eyes, they're like, now that's something I can understand.
Yeah,
Right.
It really is. Quick story. When I worked for Hartford Union High School, conversation with some students that came back that were in the community, and one of them said, "Boy, I wish I would have tried harder on the ACT." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, my employer said to your point, Fred, of just what you said, there's an equivalency equation there that the higher the score, the more income." And he explained it to the kid, the employer did. And a couple of the kids in the classroom kind of looked at him like, wow. So it was a good conversation. And it was in a tech ed class where, we weren't standing in a chemistry class with Dean. It was a tech ed class, so there is that stigma a little bit of, the ACT represents that college destination. And we'll talk a little bit about how do we move that in a little bit. But I want to go back to the NCRC. You both have referenced that. Why don't you let our listeners know what is that? Talk a little bit about it.
Apologize, not doing this one. It is your acronym of the day. We
No,
hopefully
that's all
only
right.
have one or two of them, and acronyms will just get you there. It is the National Career Readiness Certificate. So, work keys, of course, is the battery of assessments that an individual will take. Once you take three of those, which are the big three, is what we call them. Those three assessments and those three skill sets are what we see in a majority of jobs that we have profiled. Profiles mean we've gone out to employers across the country, we've analyzed their jobs, and that helps actually influence our work keys assessments, questions, and also helps us update them. So that is direct correlation to employer input. So that means that once you get a NCRC, that means you scored a 3 or higher. There's a scale in that, just like there's everything from
Yeah.
1 to 7, and you can get scores. Bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And that is our scaling system for the National Career Readiness Certificate. And while we have those systems, of course, bronze means you can do X number. I think it's around 20% of jobs, and then it incrementally gets higher for every skill level you increase. You can also go in and see your individual score sets, and that's when you can do apples to apples comparisons with jobs across the country that have done profiles. So when you're looking at a local employer that says, hey, we hire based upon the NCRC scores, we usually require a 5.54. And that employer is looking for a match from those applicants to hit those same scores. So that's what that NCRC is. It's our credential. It's how we determine certification within our work-ready communities across the country. And it really gives that common language that we talked about earlier that connects all of the different pieces of the workforce pathway within a community, a region, or a state that's trying to establish some sort of pipeline to make sure their employers have skilled employees to go into the future.
Wow, good stuff.
I did a presentation at a tiny little high school in northern Wisconsin, and talked about that NCRC and what it means. And one of the epiphanies I had when I was researching for this is, if you go to Michigan or Illinois, there's a lot of employers that will hire you on the spot if you have a certain level of NCRC readiness. And one of the biggest things that people don't know about the regular ACT test over and above the work keys test is that those standards on which the tests are based come from a national curriculum survey. They ask educators and they ask employers and employees, what should kids know and be able to do? What skills do they need? And that's where they write the ACT standards. That's where they take the assessments from. And so when you take that assessment, of course, it prepares you, it tells you if you're ready for college, but you're getting skills that workplace people want in their employers, and it shows in that National Career Readiness Certificate rating.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into some of that a little bit more. I do have to brag here a little bit, though, fellas. I got a 36 on my ACT. Hey, look at your eyes light up there, Dean.
Wow.
Isn't that something? Yeah, the first time I took it, I got an 11. Second time I took it, I got a 13. And the third time I took it, I got a 12. So doesn't that add up to 36? Is that how that works?
I think so. That's not exactly how the super score works, but
Well, we didn't, this was back in 1983 or 4-ish. So I'm not sure if we had the NCRC and some of those types of things. I had a hard time finding the relevance in the exam. The information you guys are given make it really understandable of really how important it is. So let's talk a little bit about what does this look like? I know, Fred, you've got a lot of things happening in some of the states outside of Wisconsin. We're not dabbling in work keys quite as much maybe as we could. One area that I work with schools at the front end when we start to look at career readiness and community readiness is to help students identify what would be a good match in a career in the community match. And we use a lot of different inventories. We use a lot of different information for them to utilize. and make those connections. And I'm recognizing work keys could really be something valuable for that journey for students. And not only work keys, but the ACT in general, as you explain it, Dean. Talk to me a little bit about, what can this look like in schools where they can take advantage of not only the ACT, but also, the ACT work keys.
Hop in first, Dean, and then I'll go on a little bit of a longer description of some of our best practice communities.
Well, the way I see it is I feel like a missionary going around to schools and just telling this story, telling, that there are options out there. I'm sure Fred will tell this or explain this further, but work keys got off to a kind of a bad start in Wisconsin, and so now a lot of schools have ignored it. They don't think about it anymore. But there's real value in it, especially for schools that have like a lot of kids that are doing apprenticeships and that kind of thing, after school work programs that they're going right into the jobs that they might do someday. Having that NCRC rating gives them an opportunity to show employers, hey, I've got this gold rating, I can do this job. And if they go out of state, it might even be more prevalent, like I mentioned, Michigan and Illinois. But that's sort of my mission, is just to try and go around and explain that there are other options out there. We do ACT does has a tool called Mosaic that measures skills like sustaining effort and keeping an open mind and getting along with others. Those are also really valuable in the workforce community. And so those are options as well for schools. And so that's my goal, is just to make schools more aware of what's out there and what they can use to help kids succeed when they get out of high school, not just go to college.
Yeah. The even this type of conversation in front of teachers, and more importantly in front of students. I mean, when I heard you talk about the fact that business partners are a part of creating, the ACT itself, and the story that Fred gave earlier about the practical use of that information, I don't know that a lot of students understand that. I know there's a lot of great teachers that can articulate that and encourage, but we still live in that age of, I have to go do this, or I have to come in and take this exam and it's 4 hours long or whatever. So just building awareness around it, I think, is a great strategy and a great start. I know it would be in my world. So Fred, your thoughts?
Yeah, so this really gets into the core of why ACT work ready communities and our initial pilot back in Georgia really even got started. ACT work keys, it's good to picture that as the common language. We've talked about that. That's how you're able to communicate and build initiatives between your K-12, your high schools, your community colleges, your workforce board, and your employers. They all have different standards. They all have different metrics which they track success. High schools, we want to talk about graduation rate and placement. Community colleges are talking about their completion rates. Workforce boards have to make sure they place a certain number of people. Employers have to hire a certain number of people. They also have a bottom line they're held to, making sure they have individuals that are skilled enough to make that employer successful. If that employer is successful, they grow locally, they expand locally, build more jobs, and that becomes a community's then best new attraction policy for new employers. So that's what the common language is really trying to build. ACT work ready communities is an infrastructure. We're trying to just build a framework for these communities to use this common language throughout the entire system. I will tell you right off the bat, ACT work ready communities and work keys are not a silver bullet. What we are trying to deliver these communities is data for them to be able to make educated decisions based upon their workforce pipeline. If you have a large manufacturing group in your community that keeps telling your chamber, keeps telling your school, hey, we just aren't getting enough kids with math skills, and we have to keep churning them out. every 3 months because they can't get the basic skills of our lineman positions. Once they understand, well, I need a gold certificate in order to be successful here, that then trickles backwards and you can back plan from that. So community colleges, we know you have to have certain job specific trainings to go to those employers. We need you to graduate students from that training at a gold level certificate because we know we've profiled that employer.
Yeah.
They require a gold. You backtrack from that. Well, in order to get into that lineman training at the community college, you need a silver certificate. You go to your high school. Hey guys, if you want to go work at XYZ Industries and you have to go to the community college to get this certain training, we have to ensure that you have at least the silver level skill levels to be able to understand the job specific tools being taught you in that training. So then you can graduate with the gold, go into that employer and know exactly what you're doing on that job site. So work ready communities are really designed to build that group of individuals starting at high school where they are understanding it's not just about skills. It's about exploration. What do I want to do? I will tell you this quick story that's a good example. So WorkKeys, of course, tells you your skill sets. But when I first took it, you heard my story about math not being my thing. When I went in and I got my certificate, I went in and the first thing that popped up on the list of what your skills qualify you for was an accountant. I might have the necessary basic skills to be an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have been a very happy guy living my entire life as an accountant. Yeah. Nothing against accountants, but I would have been miserable. The actual exploration piece and being able to make sure you fit, that's when the magic comes in where, okay, I know that I'm really good and I really have interest in industries A, B, and C. You then match that with your skill sets. That's when you can get really into the detailed career exploration where you're not just talking hypothetically with these students.
Right.
You're saying, hey, you want to go do this and you have these skill sets. All you need to do now is be able to fill in this last gap. So we have work-ready communities right now that have been active for 10 plus years that use that benchmarking system through their high schools, that go to their community college and workforce boards. There's often a very robust industry in their area they're trying to target students to. A lot of communities have that one industry. Hey, we know you want to go work at XYZ Industries. Yeah. There's a certain path you have to be on to get there. And if you're on that path, they will pay you X number of dollars a year. Well, that sounds pretty good. That's the sought after employer in our community. And that's how you build that entire pipeline. And that's the framework we try to build. Since ACT just delivers the data and the framework, the real initiative and the reason it has become a national best practice with, I think, over 6 million NCRCs, we now have 578 communities and or counties participating, is because where communities themselves have taken that data and turned it into an initiative that was specific to their community or their region that was aligned to their specific industries. It was the initiative of the communities that had really made this a best practice, and that is going for communities all across the country, and one that we even have in Wisconsin around Chippewa Valley Tech that has built a very successful work-ready community, one that we talk about when we have a chance.
Yeah, talked about as an ecosystem, which you mentioned earlier. You know what I really enjoy hearing as I'm learning a lot about this, and it does fit into my world big time, is how it helps intentionalize work-based learning. One of our issues, I firmly believe, is that sometimes we sprint when we should be walking or at least jogging. And I see that, and I've seen that in our state over the last few years around some of the initiatives with career readiness. And work-based learning is one of them, where we're doing work-based learning rather than intentionalizing it and using tools that can help us intentionalize it. And WorkKeys sounds like that is something that can help. Gives it purpose, right? And when kids see it and see their purpose, they're going to invest more. Their priorities are going to shape up and be able to be part of a career plan as they move forward. Can you give us any examples of schools anywhere in the state that have used that WorkKeys to help intentionalize, like work-based learning and some examples like that?
Fred, that would be you. I'm
So not in Wisconsin. I know that Chippewa Valley Tech has been working with the high school. It's still newer for them, so they haven't really institutionalized it. But I do know one in the St. Louis area. I can't. Yeah, St. Louis area, south of St. Louis. They actually used it for work-based learning. They used a curriculum within their high schools where they were able to not only do their normal curriculum, but they would actually integrate pieces of work keys and skills-based learning into it. So the teacher, who is actually now with ACT, thankfully, actually was able to take certain pieces of their daily curriculum, and just like that story I told earlier, well, how do I make this real? They would then every Friday be able to say, okay, we learned this math this week. We're going to go through some work keys modules that take that level of math and put it into contractor basis, or put it into if you are working on a line for a manufacturing meeting, or let's say you're working in IT, and you actualize all of those things to where they're like, that light bulb went off. Like it went for me that moment, where, oh, this totally makes sense now. It invigorated them. It gave them that pathway finally, and said, okay. And that actually started really improving their results within school. Once that light bulb went off, they said, well, I know that I know what those letters mean now. Let's put it that way. I know what those letters mean now. I can put into things that actually understand. So St. Louis has a really good example of that. We also have some high schools that are doing a really good job in the far shelf of Colorado. But yeah, we have best practices on the ACT WorkReadyCommunity.org website, where we share all the best practices of high schools, where they're really looking at how to match those work-based learning skills and give them a pathway moving forward. That it's really taken the initiative of really great high school teachers to make that connection. They have to give that extra little bit of a push, but once they make that connection, it has some real benefits.
Yeah. Wow. That's just some really good stuff.
I can tell you a couple of schools in Wisconsin that would be ideal for this kind of thing. One of the first things that I noticed was I stopped with my predecessor at Luxembourg Casco High School, for example, and I found out that I think over 50% of their seniors are in some sort of workforce apprenticeship program. And just yesterday, I did a data workshop in Rhinelander, and we didn't do it at the high school. We did it at what's called the Kavak Center, which is a nature center. And the principal, Shane Dornfeld, was talking to me, and he said, this was built by our high school tech ed classes. They built the whole thing, and it was an absolutely beautiful wood building, perfect, kinds of technology and beautiful views on all sides, and it was built by high school kids. And I'm thinking, that is a skill, and that is a practice that is perfect, and those kids should be able to. I think last week we mentioned, the idea of portfolios. Scott, you said that you were a big fan of those. I mean, just pictures of the inside of that building would be perfect for that, along with, hopefully using ACT tools like work keys to kind of document that they have these skills in the first place.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Mike Snowberry is a good friend of mine, and I'm going to be making a trip up to Luxembourg Casco to have some conversation around career readiness. So this will be one of the topic areas we talk about, I guarantee you. So be ready for us to reach out, Dean and Fred, around this, I think. With that said, I generally, towards the end here, we talk, how do we shift the mindsets of others to understand this? Why don't we say it this way? How can people, how do people get involved? How do school districts get involved with this work with ACT, more meaningful, but more so ACT work keys?
I think, as I mentioned before, that's sort of just a mission that I need to go on and make sure that every time that I talk to a school, that's something, that's an option that is there for them. ACT has more tools than just the ACT test, and people need to know that. It got off on a bad foot initially in Wisconsin, but telling the story of the value of it. I was going to mention before, I think one of the things that has shifted education is the idea of ACP. ACP has, made kids look at where they want to go, and I think some of those epiphanies, like salary. Hey, if I go to a 4-year college, I might get this salary. But if I just take 2 years at a far lower cost and go to a technical school, I can learn this skill and make just as much, if not more, doing that. And I think some of those epiphanies have started to happen for students. And my job is just to help them with that, and maybe give them some tools that will help document the skills that they have.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff.
Yeah. So, like we talked about, every work ready community needs a flag bearer. There has to be some sort of leader locally. We do not prescribe who it has to be. It has to be the group that is motivated to be that flag bearer. We've seen communities where the K-12, high school, the superintendent is the one that says, we are really going to be the ones that are the driver here. We see community colleges, workforce boards. In some communities, we see it coming from a demand of the employers.
Yeah.
The employers say, hey, we want to be successful in this community. Right now, we aren't getting the level of skill force that we need to be successful. And if that doesn't change, we're going to have to locate somewhere else. And when it comes from the employers, that really gets people moving. And so it requires them being a flag bearer. So we have a lot of communities where one of the major requirements of being an ACT work ready community is you have to have voices and team members from all different sectors of the community. We very rarely see this be successful when it is driven from one single group. So if it's driven from the K-12, you also have to have partnership from the community colleges and the technical colleges. You also need to have employer buy-in. And to Dean's point, some of the reasons that Wisconsin got off to a bad start with Work Keys is that it was seen as a single entity's initiative. And if at the state level it's seen as one single department's initiative, then the other ones say, well, we have our own metrics, we have our own standards. It does really require, because workforce development is such an integrated system that relies on that pathway being well established, you have to be able to get buy-in from each level of that career pathway. So within Work Ready Communities, we of course have the ACT Work Ready Community website. We take applications for Work Ready Communities all the time. We're always hosting boot camps where we spend a couple of days with communities to really train them about that framework we're trying to design, train them on how to bring this in the community. And we take our curriculum from the 578 counties that have done it before them. We've built that on top of that. So that's really a big way that we can do it as ACT and in practice. But I think, Scott, it's remiss to say we also, as a nation, have to see a stigma change and a culture change around college or career. And I remember, and this is a story that happened from one of the first meetings I think I was ever at back in my old days in Georgia, where I was at a national workforce conference. There was a gentleman up on stage who was talking about the need that students need. And this was 2008, 2009. So this was controversial at the time. No, we don't always need to send kids to four-year college. There are perfectly good paying jobs that don't require a four-year degree, then sometimes paying more. And he went on a big spiel. And then a lady in the audience stood up, said, "Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it." And the whole chat, he was talking about his kids. And she said, "That's awesome. Love it. Just a quick question. You talked about your kids. Are they considering technical college or community college?" And he had to say, "Well, no, one's at Harvard right now and one's about to go to Princeton." And she's like, "Again, thank you for saying that. But until it's okay for your own
100%.
kids to go that direction." And the community I live now in Metro Atlanta, they put these banners outside of all the neighborhoods. And this time of year especially, they put these banners outside the neighborhoods that say who's graduating this year. And they put the college logo next to it. I think we are making headway, because years and years ago, it would all just be four-year colleges. But these days, I'm starting to see a mixture of your Clemsons, your Florida States, your University of Georgias, but I'm also seeing Chattahoochee Technical College. I'm seeing North Georgia Tech. And that's telling me students are starting to finally see, I don't have to go that route in order to have a successful career.
Yeah.
And you're seeing data come out now that sometimes the quickest way to owning your own business is going the technical community college route, learning your skill, building your network, and within 15 years, you have your own business that will make you far more successful than sometimes some of the pathways you go other way. So I think it requires a cultural change as well. And hopefully we're starting to really see the beginning of it. I think COVID to one point or another really did help tip it over, because I've heard more about workforce development in the past 4 years than the previous 15 years combined. It has really come to the forefront as we're seeing our workforce get kind of mixed up in a new world that we've seen the past few years.
Yeah, great stuff, man. I know I'm sitting here thinking of all the different conversations that I've had that have been very similar, Fred. Where we get the data, we're understanding it, it's right in front of our faces, yet we still say, no, I want my kids to go to college for some odd reason. Right. And there's a lot of change out there, even in our college systems. I always look at it and go, how about a gap year? But in that gap year, you are in an internship and your feet get in the doors of a great organization or a company. And before you know it, they're continuing to help you upskill, reskill, and new skill in whatever means possible while you're employed, and they're paying for it. And that's just not traditionally, what has happened in our country, over the last, 20, 30 years. So great stuff. We could talk forever. All right, we're getting to the end here. I'd like to move into one final question, and that is, our tagline is teach like it's 2045. It's a ways down the road. I'm hoping I'm retired by then, but what do you see, education looking like? But, maybe add in there, where do you see ACT work keys, down the road, and the impact and how it's involved in some of this? Go ahead, one of you guys.
I think it goes back to the ACT's North Star. One of the first things that I learned when I got the job with ACT is that the mission of ACT is to help kids be ready for whatever they choose to do. They wanted, every kid, no matter where they were headed, to learn skills that would make them ready to do whatever comes next. And if we could implement ACT tools to help with that, to provide the data, to say, the interest inventory that we do, here are the jobs that you're suited for. Here's your NCRC rating. Here's your ACT scores. Here's how you do in social and emotional learning. These are the things you're really good at: sustaining effort. You have an open mind. Employers like that. If we could somehow implement those tools into a program, like whether it be ACP or whether a school designs their own, or whether a community has a workforce ready community, if we could use those tools to help kids get to their best outcome, I think that's like the dream of educators.
Yeah.
So we're talking 2045. So I think if we're talking 2045, we can't negate the intro of artificial intelligence in this,
right?
And AI. I believe in 2045, and what I think ACT's role in this will be is that we will be the data source that helps individuals make the best decision for themselves. So if you have a student that is in that 11th grade, 12th grade area, I remember myself at that time, I didn't know what I want to be, but the reason I didn't know what I want to be was I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know what was possible. I had never been on a manufacturing floor. I had never worked in an office before. How am I supposed to know what it is I want to do? How am I supposed to know what's going to fit for me? So at that time, if we can fill in a need for the students to be able to explore the possibilities that are out there before they even start that journey, at least narrow down to what it is that you want to do. I would love for ACT to be able to help students explore the possibilities, be able to see videos that are about here's what it was like to be on the manufacturing floor. There's a lot of stuff around manufacturing that is dark and dingy, and you don't want to work there. These days, their big thing now is you can eat your lunch off of a manufacturing floor because it's that clean, it's that bright, it's that immaculate of a place. So us being able to help them explore, and then ACT work keys be able to help them to say, well, I know my skill sets, I know what I want to do, I know what I enjoy doing, my skill set, I can do these things. And that when they come to that 11th, 12th grade decision point, they can then map out using local or regional career pathways. If I go the ACT route, I got my 35 ACT. That means I can go to University of Wisconsin. I want to be an aeronautical engineer. I'm going to be able to need to take these courses there, and I'll have the opportunity to earn this amount of dollars by the time I get 5 years in that career. That's the data. That's the knowledge they need. Alternatively, they say, well, I want to be the aeronautical mechanic. I can go to the local technical college. I would require this much money to go to the technical college. I would need to take these courses and make this amount of money in 5 years. And the data behind that is what I think we will be able to see, and AI will be able to, the teenagers are using it now anyways. They can map out some of that, but I think we as communities and we as educators and workforce developers have to help build those established pipelines so that pathway becomes so much clearer, so they can see farther into the future than they ever had before and really have all the data they need to be able to make that decision.
Great stuff, fellas. I really appreciate you guys taking the time and joining us today. If people want to get a hold or get in touch with you, get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Mine is dean.simon@act.org.
Simple enough. Fred, yourself?
Yep. Frederick.McConnell@act.org. The only person to ever call me Frederick is ACT. But that's 2 C's, 2 N's, and 1 L. We are the Scottish clan that lost the battle, so we had to drop our L.
Funny. Good stuff. All right, fellas. Again, I really appreciate you guys taking time. It's been a lot of great information. Can't wait to get this one out on my newsletter. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Scott.
You betcha. And as we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care, everybody.